Nearly there.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. So I hope you're all refreshed with coffee. Our next session will start with Professor Sonal's talk that was postponed from the last session. So Sonal, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. And I know that you are a very strict timekeeper. And you have a very beautiful ringtone to remind us that we are very close to our time. Okay. Right, so you heard me before talking about our engagement with policy and especially with Food Standards Agency and what we did for the digital twin aspect and the different reviews that we did for them. Now, this is a little bit more towards industry, say our engagement with the retailers, manufacturers, and we have also engaged quite a lot with farming communities. But then I'll just limit this to manufacturers and the retailers and third sector organizations, so any NGOs that we have talked to. So very briefly, these are the team members in our newly funded, jointly funded project from EPSRC as well as STFC Food Network. So Ray, Victor, Jansu, Arthur, three of them from AMRC, Sheffield, and Ray from Manchester. And then we have Jens. Jens is almost like omnipresent in most of our project, helping us with the data science angle. But before I talk a little bit more about this EPSRC STFC project, just give you a little bit of background on where this all started off. So you have heard from Ray's presentation that we got some very much interest from WWF UK. They co-funded as well some part of the workshops and commissioned a report to our network, looking into what could be the possibilities of moving towards net zero UK food systems. And one of the possibilities that they identified was that UK retail is selling 90:10 ratio meat is to plant protein. So can we look into 50-50 protein shift from selling point of view from the retailers, and can that drive UK food systems towards a sustainable transformation? Well, thanks to Kara, who was here and who was helping us with a lot of infographics. So we have been taking her help for about more than a year now. We did a workshop last year where we brought in different stakeholders together from third sector, from industry, from policies together to understand the challenges of the system. So high level challenges, which is up here, and then sector level challenges, which is down here. And then try to understand where the STFC would come in terms of the assessment and measurements and the standardizations that we need, which is where what Ray presented to you. Then we did some prototyping of future exercise with many of them. So where we are at the moment in 2022, where we want to be in 2050, how do we reach there? What are the different possible pathways that we can take to reach to possible UK net zero food systems? And this can be applied, this kind of methodology can be applied to literally any countries in any systems. And we would be more than happy to conduct such exercises in other countries as well. This methodology has been borrowed from arts and humanities, so prototyping the future. And thankfully, we had our support from University of London, University of Arts London, who helped us with co-designing all of these together. So one of the things that we started focusing on after having varieties of options of moving towards net zero, start looking into the protein, and we found that UK is over-consuming protein, almost 35% more than we should be eating now. So and especially related to animal protein. So therefore, this concept of 50-50 protein split in sales came up. So just to give you a glimpse of how we have engaged. So we have already engaged with one of the largest retailers in the UK. So after that, Tesco has been engaging with WWF for quite some time in Better Baskets. And they have been now working on different products and marketing different products. So what is the alternative to let's say beef burger or other kind of mixed meat burger, and we did the review for them. So it is all up there in the website. Now we have we are in touch with the second largest supermarket. So with that, we would be almost covering 70 to 80% of the UK retail market to understand what methodology needs to be underpinning these marketing claims that retailers are making for their net zero. So that is again a very good way. Now, just a bit of a funny story. If anybody can take a guess where we are in this picture, that would be super helpful. Just any guesses? Yeah, but where exactly are we? And what are we doing? Except getting ourselves clicked. What else are we doing there? Any idea where we are?
Abattoir.
Abattoir, of course, yeah. But where exactly in the abattoir? Can you see any animals on behind it? No. No. We are on the roof of the factory. Okay, and this could be abattoir, this could be literally any food manufacturing, any factory. The reason why we are there, and don't even ask me how did we get there, because that was an adventure. And not sure if we actually filled the risk form of going up there, climbing all the different varieties of ladders and finally reaching up there. But this is very interesting. Why? Because when we are talking about the net zero food systems, we are also talking about the data and the granularity in the data. So when we are talking about the models, we are again talking about how granular the data are, how good the data is. And at the moment, you won't be surprised to hear this, but at the moment, many of the predictions that we are making is just on the basis of assumptions. We don't have that granularity of the data. So we are here looking into all possible pipes from electricity to water that goes into abattoirs and trying to take some of those pipes and apply or actually clamp smart meters on it to take the measurement for the data granularity, which can inform the models that is informing us for the net zero food systems from the manufacturing point of view. Okay, so here we are, thanks to EPSRC, another Network Plus, which is connected everything. They co-funded this together with STFC Food Network on demonstrating resource efficiency and energy efficiency through data-driven smart food manufacturing processes. And again, thanks to Two Sisters Food Group, who is very much open for us to come and collect data and understand the different processes, where the hotspots are in the system, and what we can do to reduce it. How many minutes? 2 minutes? Okay. I should be able to wrap up soon. So we all know that, it's the water intensive, energy intensive industry. But what is missing is they do have net zero strategies, but the net zero strategies and the net zero actions are not aligned. And it's not just for food industry, but many of the industries, they do have the same problem. We don't have granular waste data, process level data is absolutely missing. And we know that the time is ticking. So one of the quotes I present here, and I think it's true for many of the factories, especially legacy factories here in the UK and in other parts of the world, we know what goes into the site. We know what goes out of the site. We do not measure, meter, or manage what happens through the processes. So we do not understand what we actually need or how we can find a better solution. Okay, and this is a problem across the industry. So therefore, this project here, and why chicken, although we are talking about the alternative meats and things, we know that chicken is the fastest growing market. It is already growing fastest over the last few years. So we have to do something about it while we are waiting for the other products to take over. We are looking into the different pipelines, as we've told you, and looking into the different ways and the places that we can clamp the sensors on. Okay. And we are hoping that in about 6 to 7 months' time now, we should be able to produce something like a real-time platform for not just Two Sisters, but that knowledge can be transferable to any of the food industries to look into the data coming from different parts of the processes and understanding the hotspots. These are the on the left-hand side, these are the legacy machineries where the sensors can be clamped, and I see, and it can be applicable to any industry. I love that ringtone. So 30 seconds more, whether that's meat, poultry, vegetable processing, seafood, food processing, anywhere, this can be applicable. And again, from the factory level, we'll go to the regional level and national level modeling. So it's a very good test bed with a scalable use case. So I would really invite you to look into our case studies, which has combined different cases in the different countries together. And you already have a leaflet in your pack. So just a brief advert for our network is that the initial investment was 1.2 million, and the return on investment that this network has given is 22 million pounds. So yeah, thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
So do join our network and invest in us, invest your time and energy and knowledge. And I'm hoping that this is going to give us return on investment even more than 22 million. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our next speakers are Dr. Erin Lewis, Dr. Adam Cook from the Food Standards Agency.
Right, according to time, I got presentation.
So thanks all very much. I think Sonal's been very clever by keeping you all here to the end and putting the funders in at the end to make sure that some of you stay. As I said, this is going to be a bit of a joint presentation from myself and Erin, because Erin's probably the person that you'll be speaking to more often if you actually get in touch and want to collaborate further. I guess I'll start with potentially the bad news, that we don't just have a massive pot of money. That's unfortunate. We do have some, so there is some good news in there, and we're certainly keen to collaborate. We've certainly seen some examples over the last couple of days. There's some examples where we have collaborated, and they're going to be talking a bit more about some of those. And we've got a range of things that we can offer you as potential partners, and that's something we certainly want to do as we go forward. But obviously, we can only collaborate if you know more about us and what our needs are. So some of you, preaching to the converted, there are people in this room that have probably been working with the FSA longer than either myself or Erin have worked for it. But there have been some changes recently. So the first thing is we published a new strategy last year, and there are 3 aspects to our mission going forwards for the next 5 years. So the first is food is safe. It's still fundamental to what we do at the FSA. And the second is food is what it says it is. Again, fundamental to what we are at the FSA. But what's important is that third pillar. This is a relatively new aspect of the work of the FSA, and that's about being healthy and more sustainable. And how does FSA contribute to that? Well, there is areas about assuring safety and standards. It's still fundamental to what we do. Understanding consumers, very important, because we need to understand what it is going to affect that safety. What do consumers want in the future? And that's where we go into adapting for the food system of the future. We've seen a lot of work over the last couple of days, some of the stuff about the algae proteins, novel proteins. There's a lot that's developing in the world of food, and we need to adapt to that. We need to be proactive. And that's where engaging with the community is going to help us. And that's why we are committed to further engagement with the community. And there are also these global challenges, whether we're talking about climate change or any of those other areas, AMR. So we have a series of areas of research interest. There's a link on the slide. It's very small, and there'll be another link at the end that you can sort of take a note of. And we have 4 key priority areas. The first is assuring food safety and standards. This is all about our chemical hazards, our foodborne pathogens, looking at food hypersensitivity, but also food crime. There was one of the talks yesterday on the cost of food crime. Understanding consumers, again, a really key aspect. And this is about views, understanding, appetite for change, behaviours, perceptions, and how this may affect people. And it's going to affect how we design our regulation going forward, as is the food system of the future. We're doing a lot of horizon scanning, and Sonal just mentioned that work there about net zero. And we're doing a lot of work in that area as well. And because we also want to continue to be an innovative and effective regulator. And we are certainly committed to innovating, and that's why we want to work with everybody. We want to work with the people that are leading the innovation within the academic community. But there are also global challenges that we play a part in. And that is these things that we may not be the sole provider, the sole delivery on that aspect, but we do have a part to play. What is our part in climate change? What is the effect of climate change on the food system of the future? We don't maybe affect climate change, but we will be impacted by it. And each of those has a research and evidence program that engage with the science, policy, other government departments. And so we have a focal point for each of those programs and each of those questions. So you don't necessarily have to be interested in everything we do, but if there's one of those areas that you're interested in, we can have that discussion. And this is just very briefly, it's not just research. We're talking about the research questions, and a lot of the work here is about the research, the new ideas. But we also do a lot of work that isn't pure research. We have a lot of internal expertise. We have the National Reference Laboratories, and Salvarani mentioned those yesterday about assuring food standards. And we also have our science advisory committees that help with us approving new products. Again, the discussion of algae yesterday, if that is going to come to market, it needs to get approval. And that's where our SACs will be involved. And again, we need to be involved early, because otherwise that will become a blocker in the future if we don't get involved till later in the day, which is why we want to get involved early and have that discussion. We can help advise how some of those things are developed. We can understand the challenges and equally explain some of the challenges we're going to face going forwards. And at that point, I'm going to hand over to Erin, who's going to give you a bit more about the practicality of some of this work.
Thanks, Adam. So yes, I'm not going to go into too much detail because, to be perfectly honest, Sonal and Maria yesterday have given you a much better rundown of some of these collaborations. But the 21st Century Abattoir project is one of the ones that we've engaged with STFC. 2 proof of concept studies, and actually these proof of concept ideas, again, as Adam said, engaging early with the community to bring real life challenges to a new set of researchers, and also looking at, you know, is there anything we can do? Are there new and innovative ways we can start working? So these studies, as you can see in some of these photos, used things like novel imaging softwares to look at, you know, how can we detect things? How can we use these imaging technologies going forward in the meat inspection process? And as Sonal mentioned today, the digital twin in an abattoir, simulation, virtualization, technology, allowing us to help be a connected inspection process. And how do we use that in earnest in the field? Because that is the most important thing about your research at the end of the day. It's not, you know, how do we create these amazing technologies? That's just the first step. It's then how do we apply them and move them forward? So in an example output here was this incredible simulation model for pig abattoir flow process, which actually allowed us to look, okay, so what happens if, for example, we didn't have someone in a process here, or we ended up with contamination in a process at a certain step? It allowed us to actually predict and optimize those systems and behaviors. And that is a real life example of how you can then apply that in a policy setting. And I think somebody earlier was discussing those kind of policymakers enjoy that kind of almost factual visualization, what they can see in front of them before making change. Another example, again, talked about yesterday, was the honey authentication work. And again, the aims of this project, it was a fairly seed corn funded project, but it was developing a new testing method for detection of non-honey sugars in honey. Authentication is a massive thing for the FSA. It's in line with our ARIs, but having the National Food Crime Unit as part of the FSA is really important. And having these sorts of authentication methods, again, lets us do our job better, but also takes your science out into the real world. And again, machine learning models have been created as well to help that kind of development of a method. So how do you actually engage with us? So through partnership is our primary way of engaging with us. Letters of support, student placements, provision of expertise. We want to be in early. Those letters of support are really important. We can be that conduit, that route to allow collaboration between science and policy professionals. And it's also a route into other government departments. We are in wider government departments, obviously. And you can also find, as Adam said, we don't necessarily fund much research, but we do have several live calls on our platform, Atomis. So this is the most important slide of the day. So everybody in the room and outside of the room, virtually online, get your phone out now, point it at the screen. We've got a QR code here. That will take you to the FSA website. On that page, you will find out a little bit more about the areas of research interest that Adam has explained earlier. There is a link on there to sign up to the FSA newsletter. This is a quarterly newsletter that outlines basically all the opportunities that we have out at the moment, as well as recently published work. And it's also got a link to our email address, ari@food.gov.uk, which allows you to email through to us directly. That means that you now no longer need a contact. You don't need someone with a name to get in contact with us. If you know someone, great. If not, we are there. And that is it from me. I'm going to leave this up on the screen, and we have like 10 seconds left. So that's a win.
Thank you very much. The points. So much. We'll have a question session at the end. Our next talk is by Gerard Davies, who's a senior portfolio manager at EPSRC. ESRC.
Oh, right. Thank you. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here today, and I'm very pleased to be here. My name's Gerard Davies from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, and that's part of UK Research and Innovation. So we're the funding agency. So we're given our money by the UK government, and we deliver it via peer review to research, to deliver research at UK universities. So we deliver it through the UK universities. So I'm here kind of on behalf of other colleagues in the research councils today. And it's been I was only here today, but I've had a really interesting day. I've learned so much, and a lot of the work that I can see that has been happening is certainly familiar in the fact that it's kind of data science or sensing or artificial intelligence or digital twin or manufacturing. I'm sure I've missed some stuff out, but a lot of that is within the remit of the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. But in essence, a lot of this is interdisciplinary. I'll come on to that. So fairly recently, UKRI published its strategy, and there was an overarching UKRI strategy for the next 5 years, and each individual research council produced its own research strategy as well. And unsurprisingly, I guess, delivering net zero in a sustainable way is very clearly a priority that comes out across those UKOI strategies. And indeed, it's recognised, obviously, that agriculture and food and drink sector are key contributors. And we've heard some really, interesting, depressing statistics today in terms of backing that up. One thing I'd like to flag is that, within those strategies, there's, building a sustainable, productive net zero economy is a key aspect. And I've kind of highlighted a few things which are, certainly resonate, I think, with a lot of the work that's happened in this network and indeed in other investments that we've made. But we need to make a lot more progress in these areas. So one of the things we've flagged is targeting the final 20% of greenhouse gas reductions. There's a lot of things in progress, even though a lot of indicators to say that we're moving too slowly at the moment, but quite a bit of the technology is there. But we really need to make sure that we're working on areas which are going to be, that final 20%, doing the research now to make sure that that's achievable. Realising a circular economy, certainly key to what a lot of you have been working on, but within both of those things, we've got to protect our nature, biodiversity, and agricultural landscape. There's a lot of constraints to obey as regards that, and within that, obviously, developing and deploying these net zero technologies. So one of the things which I've been involved in, and we're really pleased that we've been able to fund, is a network plus. So it's another network, not this one, but another network which is looking at agri-food for sustainable net zero. And I think a key thing about this is that it has involved these 4 research councils on the right, so biotechnology and biological sciences, economic and social, us as the engineering and physical sciences, and the natural environment have come together to fund this. Part of it was a recognition that the majority of the challenges within this area are interdisciplinary, and these icons illustrate some of those. And but the approach really needs to be a whole system one. There are lots of trade-offs and checks and balances within the system that people need to be aware of. And I really enjoyed the life cycle analysis presentation earlier, in terms of that's got to inform how we take these things forward. And on the left-hand side, we've got the things which are kind of a focus to look at. So these slides are going to be available afterwards. I checked with Cindy, and but there are links to this, the investments on here. And I think this is, as I say, a key investment, and they've got some money to help inform, if you like, and hopefully be a springboard, as this has been, for kind of further research and innovation to help deliver these things, the sustainable net zero in agri-food. And these are some of the things which we felt that the network had to deliver, and this is the network is going to help with this, but it's obviously the whole community that needs to be part of this. So I hope you join the other network as well. It's important to bring in new research. We traditionally, engineering and physical sciences hasn't had a lot of investment in this area, but I think that as demonstrated by the work that was showcased today, and I'm sure yesterday as well, a lot of those areas are ones where EPSRC is active in, data science and AI, etc. It's a complicated landscape in terms of other investments, and we've got to make sure that we navigate that and make sure that we deliver as much value added as we can from each investment. So that's a challenge, I think. Ensure that the transition is sustainable, considering biodiversity and changing land use. Supporting feasibility projects, deliver a roadmap, and it's got to be a whole systems approach. So that was that investment. There are lots of, I'm not going to read all of these out, but there is quite a lot of investment that's coming through, and indeed there are some calls later on these slides to show that, you know, this is an area where there is quite a lot of investment across UKI in this area. And, you know, I think we're hearing after me from Transforming Food Systems as well. And we've got other investments, while not focused on agriculture, will certainly be related to that. So there's an energy demand investment, which is currently in peer review. There are lots of opportunities out there. So we have the kind of the portal, as it were, to look at these things. If you look on the UKI website for the funding finder, you know, that's where all of our live opportunities are, and that's where also many opportunities which are, you know, going to be coming on are also flagged as well. Many of you will be aware that we are transitioning from one way of submitting your applications to another way. So many of you will be used to working through JES, and many of you will have hopefully seen that we're transitioning to the UK funding service. So there's quite a lot of updates on that, and we're keen to guide you through that. I think because this is such an interdisciplinary area, hopefully you'll look and see that there's an interdisciplinary responsive mode opportunity, which is looking at people who are applying to things which straddle several research councils. And that's the first opportunity. So I think there will be more coming. And also EPSRC has standard research grants. So much of your work, I think, could be applied. You could apply through that route, and that is open now. There's a lot here, but you know, and many of those are fairly soon in terms of closing dates. But I wanted to show the wealth of things which are out there. This is covering stuff across not just EPSRC, but other research councils as well. And I think the land use for net zero, which is about in the middle there, is a key investment, and that's partly through DEFRA as well. So we are working with other partners in terms of delivering these things. Thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Again, avoiding the bonds, that was glorious.
Oh, you gave me some help there.
So our final talk in this session is Chris Banks from Innovate UK. He's an innovation lead in transforming food production.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm Chris from Innovate UK. Just wait for the slides. I'm likely to overrun, but I will try and get through this as much as possible. There are lots of opportunities to go, so I've got one eye on the clock already. Yeah, so I'm part of Transforming Food Production, which was actually something that was called the industrial strategy. It's one of the industrial strategy, which sort of that focus has then moved on to some of the new things that I'd like to talk about today. But I thought I'd start with Innovate UK. Many of you may not actually know Innovate UK is part of UKRI, but it's the one that's a bit different. So we're all about business-led innovation. So that's where we're predominantly supporting. And particularly most of our projects then will have academic support into those projects. But the idea and the lead of those is a business-led application. And it's still delivered through part of the government's innovation strategy. So we're all about trying to get the businesses to grow through innovation, and obviously where they need RTO support to do so. And yes, you get one, no strategies at all, and then those come all at once. So yeah, we had our own strategy as part of, as was just mentioned. And one of the things that was focused on there was the future economy. And I thought it was just useful to show this. It's always great when you're asked to give funding opportunities, and it's always good to focus on the ones you've just missed. But the reason why I put it in there is to focus on the emphasis. You know, part of the future strategy, there was £39 million allocated to food, specifically food, in a funding call called Better Food for All, that has funded 54 projects that have just been, or in the process of being announced, to the tune of 20 million of grant. And a novel and a rapid title that we always like to come up with, a nice snappy title called Novel Low Emission Food Production Systems, NoLet, which has just funded 33 projects, and that was co-supported with BBSRC. And I've seen the agenda. Unfortunately, I couldn't make much of the event, but obviously a lot of the things in Better Food for All and the areas of novel low emissions are the things that you've been talking about a lot over the last couple of days. And this has been a specific focus from things like a total control environment to cellular and acellular agriculture, plant-based proteins, but also focusing on better food, fortified food, and various other functional foods, and better food quality for everyone. Now, for those of you doing quick maths at the end of the day, that's 39 million, and I've mentioned 36 there. So where's the last 3? Well, you got 5 hours, 6 hours to get your application in to get the last of the 3 million. And I want you to focus on this because this is called a novel, an investor partnership. So this is something new that we've been doing in Innovate UK and getting a lot more support. And this will be very much focused if you're a business or a spin out and you're looking to develop your R&D at that late stage. And one of the things we continually see in the UK is that we fund projects up to a certain point and they don't make it to market. If you don't make it to market, you don't get adopted. If you don't get adopted, you have no impact. So this is all to focus on that. This is bringing investors to support the business when they get to that end stage. So Innovate UK, we fund an R&D project that is then matched in these particular examples 2 to 1 to the level of grant by a private investor or a syndicate of private investors. So we're focusing on decent sized projects, 750K to 3 million. We will fund 45% of those costs, and therefore say, let's take a £2 million project. We will fund that up to 900K of grant, and they have to raise at least 1.8 million. And what's very important is obviously we're funding the R&D. They means they've got all the funding to deliver the R&D without having to have money themselves as a business. But more importantly, they're getting an investor that's focusing and investing in the business to allow it to grow around the R&D. So when they finish, they are ready to take it to market. It's a really exciting scheme. And we've done 2 rounds of this as part of transforming food production. I won't go into detail, but the high level numbers is we funded 10 projects into the tune of £10 million of grant. They leveraged over £55 million on the initial investments. I'll give one good example that has happened only recently. We funded Higher Stakes, which is looking at cellular meat. We funded their R&D into their initial pilot plant, which their investor brought in at around the tune of about 2.6 million. We funded them just over £1 million and a bit in R&D. And before their 18-month project has ended, they've now leveraged an additional £26 million to take that to market. That's exactly what this is about. We haven't funded anything for the latter stage. They've done that by the investors that we helped them introduce. And the rule is you can have a syndicate of investors, but you have to have one that is classed as an investor in partner, an Innovate UK investor partner. When we did Transforming Food Production, we had 17 specialist investors. Now that's gone into a bigger pool within Innovate UK. And at the moment, there's a published list of 54, but there's an additional 32 about to be added. So that's 80, and that recruitment continues to grow. From the investors' perspective, they are just hoping that they will invest. They don't put money in. We don't give them any money. They're there to find investments, and our role is then to find them the best companies through our R&D sort of funding. Just a busy slide, but just to see the breadth of investors. This was from the first round. You've got some that are regional, CPT, which is very focused on the likes of alternative meats, depending where they're based on. People like Barclays, right the way through to North Star, all those. And then some specialists like Yield Lab, Cottage Quinn, who is the founder of Dumbia, so a personal investor, right the way across the board to invest. So it's a really good way of the SMEs finding an investor to take forward. And the reason why I mention that is we have just only yesterday launched a DEFRA version of this, and I'll come back to DEFRA in a moment, but a Farming Innovation Investor Partnership, which only opened, was published yesterday, opens on the 24th of July. Same model as we're doing with the Investor Partnership, but you now have longer to apply. £5 million worth of grant, which will probably leverage, let's say, 5, 6, 7 deals. If they can find the deals, the SMEs, that's the challenge for them. We will review their application. We will make sure it's of a high quality, but they have to find an investor. No mean feat at the moment, so very challenging. But then we're going to help sweeten that deal with £1 million or plus of a non-diluting investment from Innovate UK. It's pretty much the same rules as before. There is a typo on there, so it's not the 11th of August. The SMEs will be told that they're eligible from the 11th of October. And then we give them 3 or 4 months to find that investor. They might already have them, but we also give them a lot of support to get to the heads of terms by the 17th of January. So that's how it works. And we're still recruiting new investors to join that pool. And in this one, the Farming Innovation, it's all about ambitious late-stage innovative solutions to make significant steps towards improving productivity, sustainability, resilience in the agricultural sector, and all working towards net zero 2050. And this is linked to, that program is linked to the big program that we have running at the moment, which is the Farming Innovation Program. So we saw that Innovate UK has used its own funding to focus on areas, particularly areas that this program isn't focusing on. So we've used our Innovate core funding to focus on things like alternative proteins, etc., because this program is very much focused and comes from the Agricultural Transition Plan for England from DEFRA. But this is a big pot of money. This is £270 million committed up to 28-29. About 100 million has been allocated already, a whole series of different projects, but really focusing on that productivity and environmental sustainability across. And it's been delivered by Innovate UK, the Transforming Food team, built on what we've done previously. One of the key things, because of where the money is coming from the transition, obviously from the EU, is that we need, the benefit needs to show that there will be a benefit to growers in England from that. That doesn't exclude farmers and growers outside of that. You have to just make sure that there's English growers are in there. There's a great website for farming innovation. If you just type that in, that will have all the details. But very quickly, 3 themes: industry-led, collaborative R&D, lots of academic involvement in those, be it from feasibility. We also fund research starters, which is the actual farmer or the producer themselves with their own idea, supporting right the way through. Farming Futures, which is the bigger ambitious. We did a round on climate smart, we've done a round on robotics. There is a one you see in a moment. And then accelerating adoption is a new fund coming out next year, which is all about field trials done at farms to encourage adoption. So there'll be clear roles in that. But we do have a competition open live at the moment until the end of July, and this is focused on farm resilience, 12.5 million of grant, looking at 2 strands where it's collaborative, so academics to join into these, led from there. And it's all about the environmental benefits and environmental resilience, essentially, looking to measure those in the UK with the wider aspects, and particularly looking at those sorts of things. I know many of these topics have been talked about, integrated pest management, right the way from soil resilience, water management, but that is not an exhaustive list. That's just an idea of the area. So that's a typical collaborative R&D, either early stage feasibility or slightly later industrial research for those, which is open now. I always want to just always mention these 2 because we do have these themed ones, and there's a lot more coming in farming innovation. There's another 2 rounds later this year, small R&D and feasibility, and more in the new year, probably likely another around sort of working towards net zero specifically in the new year. But we always have smart grants, quite competitive, but there's been some great projects in the agri-food sector that have been funded through this when they're not available for the other ones. And the other things that is always important to mention is KTPs and how important those are. And that's my almost my last words. And these continue to go around with a roll in. The next budget deadline closes soon, but then there's a rolling budget for KTPs, and still the industry really crying out for that support with the KTPs. So that was a lot to take in, and I think I'm last, so that we can now, I think we're doing questions then, aren't we?
Brilliant, thank you very much. Thank you. And at this point, I think it would be helpful if all of the speakers could come up, and then we could have a joint Q&A session. Yes, of course. Anyone can ask questions, even the people at the front can ask questions.
Innovate UK. So you've got a very inflexible structure of resource distribution between the business and academic partners. Is there any prospect of trying to become more flexible? Because sometimes the nature of the project is such that maybe more resources are required from the to be distributed to the academic partner rather than the business. So I just want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair point. I think we've always tried to be different to the other research councils. so that it is business led. So with that inflexibility, as you refer to it as, which is generally for most innovators, usually a 30% allocation to the academic community. We have increased the flexibility. So the one example I gave on the novel low emissions, that was up to 50% because it was funded jointly by BPSRC as well. So where there's an obvious need, particularly in things like feasibility, where we would expect more industry, more academic to be involved, we are then flexible with that percentage for that particular strand of competition. But you're absolutely right, the normal standard is around 30%, but we do address it when it's clear that there's a more of an academic driver. I think the important bit is as we get later down that development line, it's almost important that the business doesn't rely on the academic group because it has to stand on its own in the commercial world. So we are trying to draw them away from that. But obviously in some of those larger projects, I mean, we've just done in the Climate Smart, you know, they are £6 million projects. So 30% of 6 million is still a massive, significant input from the academic community in those. I take the point when it's a smaller project, but we are trying to look at that when it suits the feasibility more than the later stages.
Okay, my question is to Krish from Innovate UK. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. So my question is like, do you do any kind of feedback survey or any kind of, I would say, opinion from the applications or the applicants with the post call? Because and I have observed in my kind of last few years, Innovate UK does have this inflexibility in terms of like bringing business. So when academics, a group of academics approach a business with kind of idea or business come with a problem and they form a group and they apply for a call, application, a lot of time, energy, and everything is invested in that. And while that, that the thing work is going on for the application, and we regularly get feedback from Innovate UK about this is an outstanding application, this rightly fits into, please go ahead, please apply. And we get outstanding, good, really good reviews from from the reviewers, peer reviews. And at the end, the application is not funded, citing some reasons due to pandemic, the funds were diverted because of something. How do you tackle those kind of things? But it's very difficult to bring that business back to, kind of, they invest a lot of time and money in preparing their application. So my question, if you have to summarize, do you have, kind of a bottom-up approach of understanding what is the requirements from the academics to the business? How do we make sure the process is robust and, kind of the robust process are followed? Do you have this mechanism?
Yeah, we do, and you're absolutely right. And sometimes it's incredibly difficult. I've been on both sides of the fence. I've run my own business. I've applied for these funds, and so I've seen it from both sides. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing that I would say from Innovate UK's perspective of competition rules, there is no grey lines. So, word of warning for everybody in the room: if the deadline is 11 o'clock and you submit at 11:01, you haven't submitted, you're out. If it says it's £1 million budget and you put £1 million and £5, you're out. And as an innovation lead, I'm constantly fighting that. Wow, that's ridiculous. But basically, the rules are the rules. And because of the nature of the public money, and because it's going out to businesses predominantly, they have to be draconian on those rules, which is very inflexible. But our job is to make sure that people understand that expectation to do so. You're absolutely right. I mean, we are still government funded, so we are always subject to when changes in funding goes. Our challenge was a £90 million challenge that wasn't given 90 million at the end. So we have to deliver more for less. So we always face that same issue, but it's the nature of government funding in many cases. Often the money's there, it's just with a different name on it. That's sometimes the case, an element of that. I think we do try and give feedback on all applications. I would say the best thing of Innovate UK's assessment procedure is that for every application, it uses 5 independent assessors to review it. The worst bit about Innovate UK's assessment procedure is it uses 5 independent assessors to do it, because 5 people will have completely different opinions. And we will see a project that will get scored down on its average score because one assessor didn't like it as much as the other 4. But that is the reality that we live in. As an innovation lead, we can't change that. The only thing we can do is if we feel that one assessor has been unfair or misunderstood it, we have the opportunity to make a case to have them removed and get their scores altered. But scores can go up and down on that basis as well. But we have very limited flexibility to adjust those scores. So it does end up being the highest score wins. And innovate projects, as with most funding, is overly subscribed. Those smart ones that I put up at the end, you know, great projects get funded from there, a lot don't, because it's a very competitive process, which is why the themed competitions like the ones we're running, a much better strike rate, you know, in some cases 50-50 or 30-40% chance of getting funded, because we narrow it down. I think we should do a better job of telling people that, which we keep going around in circles whether or not we should or shouldn't, but that people need to know that. And the last thing I was going to say was we do try things that when we did the large climate smart, particularly because of the academic focus, those could be led by the academic groups looking at emissions mitigations and processes. So it was naturally the thing. So in that process, we brought in an EOI, which we don't always do, so that they could do the EOI first. Then DEFRA could look at those and select which ones they like the idea of. So that was a big cutoff, and then they got to apply and then interview. So we do try and do it to try and be flexible. But because of the rules around it, there's certain things that are scarily inflexible.
Thank you, Chris. My quick question is to Jared. Now you are here, Chris is here, and you have witnessed the impact of the STFC Food Network brings into, you know, and a lot of those projects align with the EPSRC and Innovate UK. So do you see a scope where EQRI comes and, you know, funds the extension with around £5-6 million to STFC Food Network extending for 5 years? Is there a chance that
Did you say billion?
I wouldn't. And then is there a scope that, you know, this network can be extended? I'm serious about it, finding ideas and pitching, because we are aligning with the kind of UK net zero 2050 strategy. So is there a scope that we can be motivated and, you know, work towards it?
I think in terms of extended, I mean, I think the best approach would be, you know, it needs to go in as a competitive bid, as a new, well, it could be based on what happened so far, but I think it would need to come in as a new bid to compete against other things rather than be extended. I think there's we don't normally extend networks. It's not as a EPSRC. It's not. We didn't fund it in the first place, so that's another aspect. But I think we would want a new application. Is probably the best advice as regards that.
I think Innovate's the same. It's competitive, and a lot of the money is already planned where it's going to spend through competition. So it's one of the challenges. But one of the things I would say, having been around, is have your business plan ready. Have it ready. So, because as we all know, money moves around in all sorts of wonderful ways within governments, when suddenly, you know, halfway through the years when we didn't have any budget, the budget appears and it's got to be spent quickly and allocated. So have it always ready in your back pocket, because you never know when there might be a sudden call or a sudden request to get money out the door. That's constantly happening. And then of course you get to the end of the year and then there's no funding. So there's that constant reality that budgets move all the time.
Extend us, right?
Yeah, but before they move the budget to somewhere else. About this network.
Just a quick question to FSA. Is there a strategic priority? It made it crystal clear that the FSA doesn't directly fund the projects, at least the scale that the other funders do. But is there a strategic priority for which you'd be willing to fund or at least match fund any one of these sort of big projects?
It will vary on what comes in. We don't start with a preconceived idea. We've obviously got the areas of research interest, so we put it out to the audience to come in and say, this is how our work would meet one of your goals, because obviously we've got a lot more needs than we've got money. So we advertise what we need, and then it's up to the audience to come in and say, this is what we could do. And then we review it internally, compare it against our other work, and then work out what we can fund. Now, I know that we did say we don't have much money. We do equally have a reasonable amount we have funded in the past. From small projects at sort of 20,000-30,000 up to multi-million-pound projects in a couple of cases. So really, if you've got an idea, get in touch and to sort of tell us how it meets our research needs, and then we can discuss it further.
Just to briefly add to that, it is also worth noting that these sorts of ideas don't have to come out of big networks like this. If you're not affiliated with a network, it doesn't matter. Absolutely, let all your colleagues know that, you know, our door is open, we're there, we can provide that more, well, not funded support, but we, as Adam said, there's the potential that for the perfect idea, we can find something down the back of the sofa.
One thing I've just add onto that, one of the things that I've noticed over the last 6 months, particularly around alternative proteins, is that we've been working much closer with the FSA, because we're funding fundamental research on alternative proteins, which will need a regulatory focus on it to go through. So Rick Mumford was at one of our meetings recently, and the idea of sandpitting what will be needed regulatory before we need it would be a great way for the agencies to work together, so that we are funding with the right idea, so that when we get to that point, when companies are ready for the regulation submission, they already know what's needed and what's been done, rather than waiting to get to the end and then learning on the hard way. So I think that's something that ministers are very keen for different departments to work closer together.
Probably shouldn't say this, but I guess we've also got a way into UKRI and the research councils, because we help identify some of the government priorities. So that's one of the offers we've got, is we can then be, as we said, is a sort of a voice piece at those discussions. We've got one in a couple of weeks, looking at a future call that may come out and how we can help influence the questions that might be funded as part of that call.
Okay, so perhaps I can build on Chris's point then, and this is for Erin and Adam. When listen to Ray's talk, about life cycle analysis and the complexity that's out there with multiple different definitions and everything, but what do you see as the FSA's role in getting to what is the United Kingdom's benchmark for life cycle analysis? So when in a few years' time somebody asks somebody in government to go away and work out, well, how did we get on with that net zero thing? That we've got a benchmark. So Chris, to your point, how do you guys envisage the join up? Because Erin, I took your invitation apart, and it looks to me that the work Raymond's talking about ties up with priorities 1, 3, and 4. So it feels pretty strong, but we'd really like to hear what's the point of view there on how we get to where we need to be. That's I'm thinking future back rather than where I want to go.
Yeah, so we are working with us, trying to work out that baseline, like you say. And that is one of the areas we're looking at, just to see where are we and where do we need to get to. And that's part of where we act as that role within government, because obviously it is a multi-factored system. We are just one player. When you look at the whole sort of food farm to fork journey, and also the differences between sustainability, and that's why I said the sort of healthy sustainable is only one aspect of our work, but it is an area we're having to move more into. So yes, some of these projects do fit across multiple streams, and there's certainly a few that have been mentioned over the last couple of days. I think that's definitely something we need to pick up on. But I think it's about how we can be part of that wider team within government, and where we can play our part, just a small part in some of those bits, but act as a facilitator wherever possible.
One thing that we only last Thursday. Oh, sorry.
Thanks for passing the ball.
We ran a LCA workshop only last week on Thursday, because we've been funding some really large projects like the React First project and projects at Moy Park and things. And LCA was becoming a phrase that we were hearing more and more project meetings, and some of our projects never mention it. And one of the questions, one of the takeaway messages for that was, are LCAs mandatory? And everybody says they are already mandatory, because if you've got a new product or service without an LCA, you can't sell it, can't market it, you can't do it. So they don't need to regulate that, but because everyone's doing it. But you're exactly right, they need to harmonise it. And when you look across the supply chain, they've got to join up.
I think they have to be regulated, otherwise everyone's going to show up with their own LCAs. And that's no use to anybody, because then it's just mayhem, and then we're into kind of like, well, my LCA is better than your LCA, and I don't like it. So I think there does have to be a national regulation, because otherwise you've got chaos.
Yeah, so they were saying rather than regulate, you harmonise that they're all done in a particular way, but it becomes an ownership thing that, you know, because companies are often using the data that they should be using their own data to do so. So, but it was, what was also came out of that was that close link between the academic and the business. You know, businesses are benefited from the LCAs ultimately, will have to have them to go forward for those. So they have to get much closer relationships between those two to develop them correctly, because a bad LCA is bad for everybody. And what everybody was saying, that how, even though it's used such a lot, it's still a very nascent field. It's still an area that people are, you know, we had a room full of 40 specialists and only half of them have ever touched one, you know, and then when we go into carbon trading, it just opens up a whole new minefield, which these things get linked. So it's a really interesting area that we're really keen to use some of our bigger projects to help support our wider sector.
Good, then we'll look out for funding on that.
Yes. There may be one coming in the new year, who knows?
You know.
You sort of answered the question, but I want to say out loud because I don't want to be honest. Maybe online, I don't know, but we have had members of the Department of International Trade come to these, and you've got to be impressed by the multinational aspect of this network. It's impressive, isn't it? People coming all the way from all over the world, Indonesia, Africa, etc., and India, of course. You know, I think that we used to attend the DIT's agri event. I don't know if the network still does, but forgive me, I can't. Often I can't remember the other department, government department. It used to be FCO. What was it called now? Come on, it's a test. There's the other government department that deals in foreign and international aspects. It strikes me. DFID, that's it. Thank you. Not anymore. It's not DFID anymore. What's it called now?
FCDO.
FCDO. That's it. So you've got DIT, FC, and I think you mentioned other government departments, and I know we speak to them, but I think there's dimensions there, isn't there, with all this great work you've seen in the past few days.
Yeah, definitely. That has been one of the things that has been noted. I mentioned a couple of people. The international aspect is key. Now at the FSA, we do have the areas of international trade, so that is going to be a player part. So there are knowing what's going on in other countries, and there are some aspects that we are specifically looking at to see what is going on in other countries. How can we use their regulatory regimes, but also how they address some of the food safety issues in other countries. So there is that trade aspect. The other aspect is, just because we are regulating in England and Wales, doesn't mean, Northern Ireland, doesn't mean we're not interested in researchers in other countries, because the question might be being answered elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be answered by an English or Welsh Northern Ireland researcher. So that international aspect has got two components that we're certainly interested in, and speaking to other departments, like you say.
Okay. I think we are now running out of time, so let's thank all of our speakers once again.
Right. What an interesting session that was. And yeah, we had quite a bit of a passing in the ball, so I like that bit. But yeah, I'm hoping that, you know, many of such conversations would result in hopefully future calls as well. So we are looking forward to some interesting future calls coming up either this year or in the new year, Chris. Okay, now we move forward with our awards ceremony. So this is a very interesting session. We have introduced it this year. And thankfully, we have our Pro Vice Chancellor, Partnerships and Engagement back in our room to present the awards to our champions, and impact awards to the PI and the COI who have done phenomenal work in the projects, and also thanking the keynote speakers for today. And yesterday we already have given the memento, but I would like to take this as an opportunity. And this is a very unique conference, I would say, where almost all the keynote speakers have stayed for the entire sessions. We don't see this often, so I have to say thank you to Dr. Arvind Bari. Thank you to Professor Piyush Achanga. Thank you to Professor Megan Bowie. Thank you to Professor Ian Nobel. Thank you for staying all along these sessions. Just few announcements, and Cindy has given me this note to just quickly remind you all before you go. After this award ceremony, we'll have just a quick group photo with our Pro-Vice Chancellor, and then the bus will leave at 5:10, so everybody can be there downstairs, and we'll pick you all up. And whoever has the train before 5, they might have already left, but if you haven't, then feel free to go. There are food boxes for cakes and pastries. We hate wasting food, so please feel free to grab them while you're going. And reimbursement, very important. Please do fill in your reimbursement after you have reached home, relaxed a bit, but try and do that within next couple of weeks, because Cindy would be around and she can take care of the reimbursement from our university, which takes its own time to get things sorted. So please do fill in the form within the next couple of weeks. Right, now moving on to the award ceremony. We first would like to give out the awards to our keynote speakers for today. And we have already handed in the award to Dr. Arvindabari, Silvarani Elahi, and Professor Pius. So now I would request Professor Ian Noble to kindly accept this token of appreciation from us. So thank you for giving us a wonderful treatment. Thank you, Paul. And then we have Professor Megan Povey. Thank you for giving us insightful thoughts. And we do not have in person Dr. Ramu or Ramajanelu GV, but we are definitely going to post his award back to him. So memento back to Ramu. I think, yeah, it is well deserved for Ramu. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and now this is a surprise thing, surprise. So inspiring leader for STFC Food Network, SFN Plus, Chef McBride. Innovation advisor, you can face the thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being there with STFC Food Network. I think before 2016, 2015, whenever that idea came into your head, that crazy idea, which we hope that we have done justice to your crazy idea. Yeah. Myself and Sarah, we are going to take. Thank you. So we are going to hear from Jeff towards the end. I'll give the floor to you, Jeff, in a bit. Now coming to our most engaged champions. So there have been 5 definitely most engaged champions. I mean, all of you have been engaged, but I have to reward, or like, we have to reward them who have gone up and beyond their normal routines to engage with STFC Food Network, because these are volunteer roles. So a token of appreciation. So Laurie Fisher, who isn't here at the moment, we are going to post the award for her. She is our STFC Food Network champion for sustainable development. A round of applause. She has been engaged with several different attendants in the conferences, the different conferences within UK. And then Dr. Jens Jensen is the champion for data science, almost omnipresent in most of the project. So yes, Jens, please. We sincerely rely on him to take care of any data science related capabilities from STFC and connect us to the right people. Thank you, Jens. Himi, who was here again yesterday and this morning, but again she had other commitments, so she had to leave. So she is champion for consumer behavior. She has been absolutely phenomenal for the sector. So thanks, Himi. Then again, Ify, we have already given her the award. She is our international knowledge exchange fellow, and she's been doing a wonderful job with COP and other international conferences where she presents what SFN does. So bringing in the different international. Thank you. Finally, we have Raymond away. So the liaison for food policy. Thanks, Ray. He's a star. He's a hero when it comes to liaising with policy and industry. So thank you, Raymond, for going up and beyond your normal university commitment. I know how daunting it can be with all the teaching commitments and the research commitments that we have, and on the top of that, then you are doing the liaising and the championship. So thank you for that. And that's it for champions. Now we are moving to impact awards. So these are the people who have again gone up and beyond their scoping projects, proof of concept projects, to go ahead and do some wonderful, wonderful work, whether that is related to publications or that is related to external fundings. So we have Dr. Steven Chivaza, Associate Professor from Durham University. Thank you for that. He's been So he is being awarded this award because he was awarded SFN Scoping Award in 2021 for his project, which you have heard yesterday, on non-disruptive in situ root imaging to investigate the role of soil microbes in cowpea drought stress adaptive responses. He has secured many of the additional fundings from different organizations, from Innovate UK to UKRIODA to Royal Society, Durham University, and also philanthropic support to expand his project. So he has been doing some amazing work and liaising with different policy as well as the industry. So well done, Stephen. Then we have our star presenter, Dr. Manoj Menon, University of Sheffield. And he's being awarded this prize because he has gone up and beyond and published several publications, journal publications, from just minor investment from STFC network. Commendable work. Thank you, Dr. Manoj Menon. And then finally, we have Edward Smart, who is again not here, but he has done some fantastic work on food fraud and got external grant of 500 plus when we only invested in him 10K or less than that. So that's again, very, very good achievement from small corporations. Thank you.
Friends, colleagues, can I just say a huge, congratulations to all of the winners. Awards are important because they acknowledge the work that goes quietly on. It's what I call the hidden labor, the hidden work, where people are making a measurable difference. I talked this morning about the importance of leadership and leading by example. And I think these awards show us, from impact to knowledge exchange, to leadership and leading the field, and staying with it. But colleagues and friends, events like this don't happen. They don't happen by chance. They happen because there is a group of people that work tirelessly behind the scenes to allow the conference to do the work of good conference, which is to explore ideas, to share research, to think about impact, to think about knowledge exchange. And so I want to take a moment, to thank a couple of people. First of all, I want to thank what I call the hidden conference team. The work that my colleague Cindy and her team do to provide us with that.
So please keep her out of
Thank you. And I think that shows, They make our jobs easy because they handle all of the administration and they do it with just such warmth and enthusiasm and energy, and that doesn't get unnoticed. But it also takes research leaderships. I've just come from a meeting with the Vice Chancellor, and we were talking about this conference. Ian, I was talking about the work that you were doing because I was fortunate enough, you know, to hear about it this morning, and some of the other presentations that I've been following on social media, on LinkedIn and Twitter, as opposed to doing the day job that I was being paid to do today, because you stole my heart at the conference this morning. But it also takes research leadership of, you know, our early career researchers, you know, our lecturers, our senior lecturers, our readers, and our professors. And I have the privilege to work with one of those leaders, and she is definitely both a leader in the making and a leader in this institution that is making a measurable difference. Can we please give our thanks to Professor Chona Chowdhury, who without was the So colleagues, a huge thank you. Thank you for coming to York. Thank you for sharing, you know, your flair, your imagination, your new ideas. I said, you know, I'm going to finish with the Lenin quote that I started with. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The last 2 days and from here onwards will be about how we shine that light to make the measurable difference, both in terms of, you know, our supply chains and in our food. And Ian, I want to finish on a note that you said just now. We do have to have a collective response, because that collective response is what is going to create the impact, from consumer to research, you know, to shop owners, to supermarkets, to the research that we do, to large corporations. This is a collective effort. So today we are starting that movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kiran Trihan, for your encouraging words and some surprise moments there. But now I would like to invite Mr. Jeff McBride to close the session. With that, can I request all the keynote speakers who have stayed with us for so long to just have maybe a minute to reflect how this conference has been. So we will be inviting you all after Jeff, just for 1 minute, and then hopefully we'll be closing down, at least until next year.
Thanks. I'm going to say a few things about the afternoon, because it's been such a great 2 days, and this afternoon was no different. And I was fooled as usual and lulled in a false sense of security, because it all started out very normal and sensible, and rightly so, about sustainability barriers, and we saw about the supply chains go for fresh and digital platforms, and it was all good, and cold chains and fish, cold chain storage and that sort of thing. But then started to talk about bioeconomy, and I thought, oh my God, we haven't thought about that. And we started to look at that. And then Ramon comes in at the last minute just to really kick it out the field and starts talking about life cycle assessment, and my brain went. And this is the annoying thing. You've annoyed me, I'm afraid, because the last 2 days has been wonderful, and I forgot how much I loved, you know, working in this area, working with all you fantastic people. You're just unstoppable. Tomorrow, I go back to UK Space Command. I go back to space, and so I don't get to do this, I'm afraid. Sorry, but I do still talk to people about you wherever I go, and so I want to say thank you for an exciting 2 days. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's certainly been worth stopping doing what I'm supposed to be doing and coming here and seeing my good colleagues and good family. I feel it feels like a professional family to me. So thank you. The last 2 days, it's been wonderful. So take care and have a safe journey home. Thank you.
I would now request Dr. Arvind Kumar Bhari to say a few words, and then Professor Pierce, you will be next.
Thank you, Sonal. In fact, I was just seated next to Rakesh, and he also told that you are a taskmaster. You would not leave anybody till the end of any event. I have seen Sonal conducting another event in my office, and I could see the same thing. I have just come here to express my gratitude to you and team for a very fantastic conference. In fact, I have lot many takeaways for my policy space. We talk about research innovation, but science of discovery is now taken over by science of delivery. We need evidences, data for the policy space, wherein I also take the leadership with a measurable difference as a good phrase for my implementation. So it was a very learning experience for me in person. So I thank you personally for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to engaging with many of you when we go forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, what can I say when all the beautiful words have come out? Suffice to say that I'm grateful for the genesis, the originators of making me come to this very exotic conference. I've enjoyed the 2 days, the Godfather, as you're popularly known. And yesterday in the corridors, just quickly, Ramesh told me that when you're married to a woman that gives you happiness, was that what you say? When a lady that gives you happiness, in reflection, you also get happiness. And this is what I've seen, that this conference has been run as a family affair. All credit to you, you are a leader. And in continuity, I'm blessed that some of us who are not from the UK have now been invited to be part of this very great family. When we met Karen this morning, the Vice Chancellor, the commitment is, and I like to repeat that, is not to what extent we are going to publish science that we find, but what is it that it can influence our way of life. So the connectivity, I want to be very much part of that. I offered yesterday, and I imagine that what ends here, I couldn't ask a question because I'm not part of the UK now, but the difference is that in Africa, we can give some seed funding and see how we can migrate these very beautiful ideas and relocate to Africa in Uganda next year. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Just on that note, for the funding, I did see on EPSRC slide that there is a UK Africa Sub-Saharan funding call with 13 September deadline, if I remember correctly. So yeah, there would be funding around it. Megan, please.
It's been an amazing 2 days. Some of us here have the ambition to transform the UK food industry into a science-based 21st century industry, creating nutritious, enjoyable, and affordable food in a sustainable way. And Professor Chowdhury is one of those. And it seems to me, being here, that all of you are also part of that project. We need this academic weight, we need the links with the industry, but together I think we can address what is actually an existential crisis in Britain. And I feel far more confident about doing that, having attended this workshop. So thank you for organising. Brilliant.
Finally, Ian, to close the conference. Yeah.
Okay. I think Kieran's better than that than me. I mean, I think just really what I wanted to say was a few things. So firstly, it's just so inspiring to be a part of the conversation and the dialogue. And I was kind of wanted to pinch a little bit off of what Jeff said. Honestly, transforming the food system makes rocket science look easy. I think we need to come back and do some proper work. So, I mean, for me, it's been great to be a part of such a passionate, determined and global. I think that's a really important part we mustn't forget. This is not something that the UK solves in the UK. We are part of a global food system. Every time we all go and with the food that we eat comes from farmers around the world. It is not just grown here in the UK. It is a global food system. It needs a global answer to the global challenge. And I think with the leadership of everyone who's in this network, in this community, then I go away with a sense of, like Megan, a sense of hope. That together we can solve this and we can transform. So thank you.
Right, so thank you to everyone who attended and who stayed for so long. I know that now it's 5 o'clock, exactly 5 o'clock, 30 seconds, and we are going to just have a group photo. Cindy reminding us, I don't know what will I do without Cindy and Paulina and Kush. So yeah, thank you for being there throughout this conference, like a backbone of this network. So thank you, my team. And please, I request you for the group photo, just outside, yeah, just outside. Just where we have coffee. And the e-vouchers would be in your inbox to all the impact awardees and all the champions soon.